So, for those who don't know me, I'm Darlene McLennan and I'm the manager of the Australian Disability Clearinghouse on Education and Training, ADCET for short. Um, my pronouns are she and her, and I'm a white woman in my mid to late 50s with grey brown hair and glasses, and I'm wearing a pink top with flowers. Today, the webinar is being live captioned. To activate those captions, you can click on the CC button either at the bottom or the top of your toolbar, of your screen. We also have captions in the browser, and the wonderful team, ADCET team, will post those into the chat now so you can access the captions in your browser. I just want to start by acknowledging that ADCET is hosted on Twitter, Tasmanian Aboriginal land, and in the spirit of reconciliation, ADCET and myself would respectfully acknowledge the Lutruwita nations and I'm not talking very well, and also recognise the Aboriginal history and culture of the land. And I want to pay my respect to elders, past and present, and to the many Aboriginal people who did not make elder status. I also want to acknowledge all other countries and lands for participants in the meeting, and also acknowledge their elders and ancestors and the legacy to us and any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining the webinar today. Also like to invite you to write in the chat, I think which many of you know the deal now, write in the chat on which lands you are. It's fabulous to acknowledge that in the way we do. Okay, today's webinar, Integrating Assistive Technology and Study Skill Strategies with FindMyFlow, a neuro-inclusive e-learning for AT users. Presented by Lucy Toffolo. We'll explore the benefits of FindMyFlow, an innovative neuro-inclusive e-learning platform that integrates assistive technology training and study skills. As we described in all the promotion, this is a vendor demonstration, but it's just looking briefly at the tools and resources. I think it's going to be very informative for our student cohort across the country. Just a couple of more other housekeeping details. This webinar, as we said at the beginning, is captioned, and the wonderful Sharon is doing that from Bradley Reporting. The event is being recorded, and the recording will be made available on ADCET in the coming days. If you have any technical difficulties, you can email us at admin@adcet.edu.au. Lucy will talk for around 40 to 50 minutes, and then we'll have some time for questions. For those who haven't attended a session before, just to know that the chat box we have for each of us to talk to each other, encourage you to chat amongst yourselves, but please choose all panelists and attendees if you're wanting to reach out to everybody else. But if you're wanting to ask a question for us to ask Lucy at the end, please put that into the Q&A box rather than chat box. That just makes it easier for us to manage. So just a reminder, chat in the chat and questions in the Q&A box. Hopefully that's simple. Okay, Lucy, that's enough from me. Thank you so much for joining us. It's very early where you are, but we really, really appreciate you providing the time for us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Darlene. Really appreciate the invite to come along and speak to the lovely ADCET crowd. It is early here. It's still dark, so I'm relying on you all to brighten up my morning. No pressure, and I'm hoping that I can bring hopefully some brightness to the end of your day as well. So as Darlene kindly introduced, I am here to talk about integrating assistive technology and study skills strategies with FindMyFlow, which on reflection, I appreciate is a bit of a mouthful of a title. So thanks for bearing with that, Darlene, as well. Yes, just to acknowledge upfront, it is a commercial product, a neuro-inclusive e-learning platform for assistive technology users, as it says here. And currently FindMyFlow is I would say a product in, and also very much a product of, the UK system for disability support. So I'm very much approaching this as an exploratory session. So absolutely here to introduce you to FindMyFlow as a product. But I'll also be digging into the context of use a little bit, and really aiming to understand whether there are parallels between the UK system, the UK situation, and how things are for you guys in Australia. So it is the first outing of FindMyFlow for Australia, so quite exciting. In terms of an agenda, if I can just get onto, oh no, bear with me a second, gone wrong already. Yay. My agenda. So I've put together a short agenda here just to let you know what lies in store. So I'll introduce myself and Team FindMyFlow. I'll dive into the problem space a little bit. I'm having issues controlling my slides. I'm so sorry. This is all working fine earlier on, and I'm not sure what I am doing. Okay. I'll dive into the problem space, which is not the problem space of me controlling my slides, and why, how FindMyFlow came to be, why the product exists. I will then hopefully go into a live product demonstration just to give a little bit of a tour of the platform itself, and so enable you to see the content, understand what it is that I'm talking about. I'll wrap that up with a user testimonial from our user Amir. And then, as Darlene said, there should be a good amount of time at the end for questions and hopefully also for any reflections that you have. So it'll be really interesting from my perspective to get any feedback you have, to get your first impressions of the product and understand whether you and your students experience some of the same issues. Okay, now we're rolling with the slides. So I've included a picture of myself on the slides. I am Lucy Toffolo. In the photo on the slides, I'm wearing a scarf. Today I'm wearing a scarf I am known for scarf wearing regardless of the time of year. I've been with FindMyFlow for about 10 months now, and that has gone quite quickly. So I started in January of this year. Prior to that, I've been in EdTech with a focus on technology for tertiary education for about 15 years. So before coming to FindMyFlow, I was part of the team at Sonocent, which is now Glean. I started there as a training manager and worked on things like the skills portal for audio note taker, the original audio note taking tool, before joining the product team that researched and developed Glean as that sort of next generation cloud based note taking tool. Another fact about me is that I'm a twin. Non-identical, sadly, so I can't pass off any technical hiccups on a doppelganger, but I have a twin brother, Alex. He is severely dyslexic, so he was diagnosed about 11 or 12 years old, I think, and at the time the extent of assistive tech for dyslexia, I think, was probably the coloured overlays. It was still very much, you know, an analog world that we were learning in. And Alex really struggled through school. So he was an absolute computer whiz. And at 16, he went to college to study information technology. But because he struggled so much with the requirements of written assignments, he ended up dropping out without any formal qualifications at all. And I think he genuinely still to this day carries shame about that, because he was so smart. He was really, really capable. I, on the other hand, I loved school. I flourished in that structured environment. And it was only when I got to university that things all sort of unravelled. And I really struggled with that self-directed learning. I experienced issues with mental health, but also with executive functioning, with organisation. And it was tough. It took me a few extra years to graduate. I wasn't aware of any support. I didn't engage with support. So it took a while. I did get there, and again, I think that was something that for a long time I was quite angry. I was a bit disappointed with myself for how that went down. I'd had high expectations, and I think it was really these parallel lived experiences of myself and my twin that really drew me to assistive technology as a means to help students thrive and to overcome some of those differences and things that can present barriers to, you know, how brilliant we really are. You'll be pleased, although maybe not surprised, to know that my twin Alex went on to be really successful in his field. And nowadays, of course, he is supported with tech like voice control and text to speech and autocorrect and all of the things that help him sort of enhance the coping strategies he developed for himself. I recently got a diagnosis of ADHD, which was surprising to me at first, but I think it really made a lot of things make sense. So I like to think of myself as neurospicy. I know not everyone will necessarily relate with that term, but I do. I quite like that. And I'm conscious that I'm still learning to find my flow, which sounds really cheesy now that I'm saying it out loud. Obviously, it relates to the name of the product, FindMyFlow. But that really is where the product name and where the broader ambition of the company comes from. So it's that desire to help students identify the tools and the strategies that will work for them and the unique way that their brain works. The unique way that they need to go about things, so that they can, I suppose, hopefully get to something like a flow state, or realistically, let's face it, just get started, you know, just feel that they can do what they need to do without jumping through, you know, many more hoops than their peers. So I did say a little bit about me that felt like quite a lot. I will take a swift drink of water and then move on to speak about the team at FindMyFlow. So we're a small UK-based team, and the founders of FindMyFlow started out their careers as AT trainers. For context, the UK's Disabled Students Allowance Scheme is a government, a nationwide scheme that covers the cost of assistive technology and of assistive technology training. So most trainers are freelance specialists. They work external to the universities, but obviously working on a one-on-one basis with students. We do have, universities do have their own internal AT trainers as well, or AT specialists typically. But in this context, the FindMyFlowers were those freelance AT trainers travelling all around London predominantly to meet up with students and train them on their tech. They also were trained in media production. Their backgrounds was media production and interest in accessibility. So they sort of had the skill set for creating the content. But where the idea came from was, or the idea for this e-learning platform that was focused on the practical application of assistive technology came out of their experience as trainers in that context, with huge student caseloads and shrinking budgets for training. So the training budgets within our Disabled Students Allowance Scheme are refactored reasonably often, and it seemed to them that as the number of assistive tech tools approved through the system increased, the number of one-to-one contact hours that they were able to have with the students was being squeezed down. And so it got harder and harder to move beyond the how of the software, the here's how this works, click here and do this, to the when and the why. So the here's how to use your assistive technology for better essay writing, for example. Here's how to use a mind map to express ideas. So FindMyFlow really started out as a homegrown resource that our trainers use as an extension of their one-on-one time with the student. They used those media production skills to create short videos, create guides that could be shared with students as homework to do in between sessions, or to take away to remind them of some of the AT-based strategies that they might need to use further down the line. The team is also a neurodiverse team, so I think that really helps us ensure that the content included on the platform, as well as the platform itself, are neuro-friendly. If it doesn't work for our brains, it's not necessarily going to work for students with disability or with neurodifferences. So hopefully when I go into the product, I'll be able to demonstrate that it is simple, clear, and kind of chunked down in the way that it presents information. And finally, a little bit of an ND joke here, but we're definitely hyper-focused, really focused, really passionate about enabling students to thrive. And the way that we try to do that is by scaffolding how and when they'll use their assistive technology. So that is the team. And then I feel like I've been talking for quite a long time to only be getting to this point. But in terms of what FindMyFlow is then in a nutshell, it's a neuro-inclusive e-learning platform for assistive technology users. The screenshot on my slide here is a snippet of content from FindMyFlow, in this case focused on using Glean to get the most out of lectures. So it shows our module, lectures with Glean, as well as a video that shows the Glean interface, as well as some animations to pull out some of the key sort of aspects of the product. In this case, it's showing the audio chunking within Glean. Also worth calling out that FindMyFlow is the most recommended e-learning platform within the Disabled Students Allowance Scheme in the UK. There are other platforms, but they tend to be more, I suppose, traditional software tutorials. They're focused on the how to use it. I don't have that same focus on practical strategies, and I think that that's borne out then in the recommendation numbers. So I want to move on to talk about the problem space now. I think we've definitely touched on that a little bit already, and it is a complex problem, so in the time that we've got, it's always going to be reduced down a little bit, but I think in a nutshell it's this. So to be transformative, AT needs to be used. We all have seen, I'm sure, the joy in a student's face when they discover a bit of assistive technology that makes things click into place for them. We've seen the transformative power of assistive technology, but it's also true to say that it's not enough to teach students the functions of their technology, to just provide them with the tool. To be truly assistive tech support needs to be integrated with personalised study strategies, so exploring mind mapping for planning, for structuring, for writing assignments. And it's also fair to say that for students, especially students with disability or with neurodifferences, remembering how and when to use the different bits of assistive technology they have access to is a challenge, especially where training takes place early on. There's so much for them to learn. The university context is new. There are just so many things happening. It is an additional ask for them. So I want to move on to briefly pull out some key themes from academic research around study skills and assistive technology, I'm not a full-time researcher, so I will caveat that, but I did want to just kind of bring this into the presentation. So on my screen, I have pulled out just a couple of articles on the impact of a study skills instruction. So a mini literature review, and I do have the references that I can share afterwards if anyone's interested to delve into this a little bit further, but it is just a snapshot of the research. And there is quite a lot of research in this area around the impact of study skills, of academic skills, of student success. So lots of different names for what is essentially supporting students with skills, with strategies to approach their academic studies, the tasks that they need to get done, such as essay writing, preparing for exams, delivering presentations, learning from lectures, that sort of thing. And hopefully not surprisingly, engagement with study skills sessions of this nature is linked to higher course completion rates. That seems to be, you know, a consistent consensus here. It's linked to higher GPAs, typically up to 1 grade point. So students who have engaged with study skills could be getting up to an additional grade point in their GPA compared to their peers that are not engaging with study skills sessions. I did also managed to find one recent paper that was focused on academic skills consultations in Australia. So this was from Southern Cross University. I don't know if we have anyone from that institution in attendance today, but this is a paper from 2021, Student Success and Retention, What's Academic Skills Got to Do with It? And interestingly, this paper, so Ashton Hay et al., found that across a variety of different courses and different disciplines, students attending academic skills had 10 to 14% higher success rates, so course pass rates, ultimately. Just taking a drink of water. One of the interesting points that came out of this study was that actually certain student groups were more likely to make use of those services. 77% of academic skills service users were female, for example, which was disproportionate in relation to the overall student population. They found that male students and students studying online, for example, were underrepresented. They weren't engaging with those academic skills sessions at the same rate. Moving on then to look at the impact of AT use and research in that area. Again, looking at more recent articles that are focusing on the use of assistive technology, and in particular a paper by McNichol et al. That was a kind of systematic review of research up to the point of publication, which to be fair was 2019, and things obviously move quickly in this sector. But that kind of review of the literature pulled out some kind of key themes. So the first being that assistive technology use is linked to improved academic performance. Another, I suppose, benefit, another outcome of assistive technology use, the students are more autonomous, more motivated, more confident. There are real kind of psychological benefits to the effective use of assistive technology. It also improved their sense of autonomy, their self-expression, that kind of sense of self-efficacy, that having these tools at their disposal and knowing, you know, how to employ them to tackle their academic tasks really is kind of beneficial in multiple different ways. The fourth point that that review pulled out, and that again is echoed across some of the other research papers, is that there are obviously factors that hinder effective use of assistive technology, or use, I suppose, lead to technology not being really adopted in the first place, or what we might call AT abandonment. I'm sure that's not the first time that you're hearing this phrase, but the key things that were pulled out were inadequate training, a lack of ongoing support, and often just a lack of knowledge about useful features. So maybe something that had been introduced to the student, but then they haven't remembered that they can use it for a particular strategy or a particular purpose. So yeah, plenty of research around the impact of study skills, less but a decent body of research around the impact of assistive technology use. But what did sort of strike me is there was very little research that seemed to focus on those two things together, on the combination of assistive technology and study skills. They exist as separate spheres, and that's what I've tried to represent on this slide, where I have assistive technology in a blue sphere or a blue circle over one side, it's dividing line, and study skills over on the other side. I think it's fair to say that assistive technology is typically a reasonable adjustment. It's not necessarily available to everyone unless an institution is able to take a UDL approach, which isn't always necessarily feasible or something that the institution is going to be happy to invest in. On the other hand, study skills typically are more mainstream services. They're available to the wider student population, typically with no declaration of disability, no kind of evidence of need necessarily required. Certainly that was my experience for those services in the UK. That's not to say that students with disability aren't accessing study skills services, aren't making use of that, but typically study skills within the higher education context aren't strictly tailored to AT users. It may be that the situation in Australia is different, and if so, I would love to hear about that. I'm sure there are always, pockets where things are done differently in any case. But this came across in the literature as well, that I suppose the two there isn't much research in looking at the cumulative effect of these two things, so we can only extrapolate that if assistive technology use supports improved student success, and study skills supports greater student success, that the combination of the two, that tailoring study skills to the assistive technology that a student has, should help reduce some of that AT abandonment, and should help them to really succeed and overcome some of those barriers that they might experience. So I've pulled out a graphic here on my side, which is from, or adapted from, the Journal of Neurodiversity in Higher Education, so a UK-based a publication that looks at support silos, so entitled The Silo Effect of Support. And this is showing, again, in that UK context of the Disabled Students Allowance, where those stakeholders often are external to an institution, but I think it does map onto the situation within institutions as well. We have key stakeholders in student support. So I have a pink circle that reads disability assessor or advisor. So the person that's going to be first meeting with that student, trying to understand what they struggle with, what sort of challenges they need to overcome, and what tools and strategies might best support that student. And they have a thought bubble here: will the student use their software? So they're meeting with the student, they're identifying needs, they're recommending solutions, but then they're not necessarily going to be the person that then carries that through and is able to support the student on an ongoing basis. So will what they've recommended go on to be used and have the transformative impact that they hope for? Next, we have the AT trainer. So like the founders of FindMyFlow, the person who's actually going to be showing the student how to use their software. And the thought bubble they have is, what study strategies could I support with AT? And then finally, we have the study skills support stakeholder. And they're thinking, is there any good AT to support my student with referencing? So I think this illustrates it quite well. It is a simplification, of course, and we absolutely know that AT specialists have to understand strategies of use of assistive technology, and that, you know, study skills tutors will have an understanding of assistive technology. Some of them, you know, will become experts in that area, but on the whole, we do still, I think this graphic was published in 2016, but definitely still feel that disconnect, that siloed effect of support, where study skills and assistive technology training sort of exist in their own silos. Now, I mentioned, I suppose, that focus is on our system, where the stakeholders are potentially a little bit external to the institution. From conversations with institutions in the UK, there is a similar picture emerges. So disability services and academic skills or student success or study skills support typically are siloed departments. They're separate disciplines. So you train to become an AT trainer, or you train to be a study skills support specialist. Again, there will be areas of overlap, but ultimately it's not the sort of primary area. And as ever, there are time constraints that, you know, means people aren't necessarily incentivized to be able to be experts across both. One of the, I suppose, the key challenges that tends to come up within the institutional context as well is there are those peaks in demand. So students, understandably, and this 100% would have been me if this type of support had been available at the time, students put off seeking help. They put off, you know, getting training on their assistive technology. They put off engaging with academic skills until crunch time. And then there are these kind of huge peaks in demand for study skills services, for assistive technology training around those key assignment and exam periods. And demand is really outstripping the capacity within the institutions. So this is, I suppose, the situation as we see it in the UK. This is where FindMyFlow as a product has kind of come out from. And every institution in the UK I've spoken to, I think, would like for disability services and their student success or their academic skills department to collaborate more closely and to work together. But in reality, I think I've seen little change in that respect in my time within the industry. That brings me on to my poll question. So I appreciate it's late in your afternoon, so hopefully not too many of you have dozed off, but if you could consider and respond to the following poll question. On a scale of 1 to 10, how integrated are academic skills and assistive technology in your institution? So on a scale of 1 to 10, how integrated are academic skills and assistive tech in your institution, where 1 is highly siloed, so very, very separate, very little collaboration or integration, and 10 is fully integrated, no further work to be done. So hopefully that poll is up on your screen now.
It is, Lucy, I think. So hopefully people are voting. Just give it a couple of more seconds. So,
thank you, Darlene. I'm not sure whether I can see results coming through. So.
No, we can't. No, we can't. Worse luck. So I think Kylie is the only one that gets to have that. So we might then publish it. Kylie, you're right to go, and then if you want to read it out, Lucy, that would be great. So.
Okay, so there is a bit of a spread. Nobody went for a 9 or a 10, so no one feels it's that integrated. A couple of 7 and 8s, which is really good to see. But yes, the overall, the top choice was number 1. So 26% of the 23 votes were for 1. AT and study skills are highly siloed. And then the rest sort of split across some of those higher marks with number 8 being the top score. So I think that does echo what we're seeing in the UK, and highlights that it's not purely a UK problem. So yeah, really appreciate you taking time to answer the poll there.
So you better close it off your screen now, Lucy. Yep, great.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for that, team. So before I move into or onto a quick tour of the product itself, just to recap how FindMyFlow helps with this. So first of all, eLearning amplifies the reach of one-to-one training. So we're not saying that, adopting FindMyFlow, using it to eLearning is going to revolutionize everything and bring those departments together. But hopefully it serves as a tool that can work for students and for individuals within those two departments to sort of try to bring those worlds a little bit closer together. From the student perspective, eLearning is available 24/7. In the UK, we offer a course-long license to students, so it's kind of a through the DSA system or with institutional kind of site licenses. They're giving students access for 3 or 4 or 5 years. It's available out of hours. It's available during those peak service usage times as well, when everyone's kind of rushing to get that in-person support. It's web-based, so it's accessible on any browser and any device, including mobile. And yeah, the key thing is it scaffolds the development of those, what we call AT-based study skills, long after one-to-one support has ended. And that's another thing to say in the UK context. It tends to be front-loaded. It all happens at the beginning of, the beginning of first year, when you haven't necessarily had the experience of how studying at university even goes down. So the next slide is just a visual to show those separate spheres of AT and study skills sort of blending together in a Venn diagram with FindMyFlow at the centre. So a grand claim, but definitely where our ambition lies and what we're hoping to achieve. And then finally, before I get into jump into a demo, just to showcase our latest update that I think helps in this respect as well, is that just last month we released an update that allowed us to combine multiple pieces of assistive technology in sort of combo tutorials. We call them multi-software tutorials. There's an example of one on the screen, which is information on using Dragon together with MindView. So creating a mind map using those voice commands. So excuse me. So video explainers around combining different AT tools to get the sort of maximum impact. Hopefully that will make more sense as I jump out now into a demonstration after a big glug of water. So I'm hoping that I've now switched my screen sharing to my browser and showing FindMyFlow. Or the FindMyFlow website at findmyflow.co.uk. And what I'm going to do is quickly sign in and then give you a whistle-stop tour of the platform and the content. And here, if I get my password right. There we go, I'm in. Now, the reason I'm signing in right from the beginning and risking forgetting passwords is just to show you our short onboarding flow. So this is just that kind of setup steps where we ask some information of the student. I'm quickly filling in course information. So we ask for a start and end date and a subject area for the student's course. That potentially is helpful in identifying resources that are more relevant for STEM students or students in medicine or whatever it might be. Now, I'm clicked onto our next step, and this is where the magic happens. This is where we customise the FindMyFlow platform according to the assistive technology the end user has access to. So on my screen, I've got a list of different assistive technology broken down by category. So under text-to-speech, I have ClaroRead, I have the scanning pens, C-Pen reader, read and write, another tool called TextAid. I then have a mind mapping section, spelling and grammar, note-taking and recording, and so on. So a student within the DSA might typically receive a number of different pieces of AT, obviously depending on their diagnosis and the strategies that are going to work for them. So in this case, I'm going to select read and write. I'm going to select MindView as a mind mapping tool, Grammarly, Glean Notes because I feel obliged for historical reasons, as well as Dragon under voice recognition. And there are also some other specialist tools, so PresentPal, which I don't know whether they're working in Australia, but a sort of presentation support tool, so I'll select that one as well. But there are various different options and combinations that I would select here. And when I press next on my screen, the platform has a little refresh, and what it's doing is pulling in content for the bits of AT I've selected and hiding away everything else. So it's customized just to the assistive technology that I, as the end user, as the student, have been recommended. The final steps of onboarding ask around level of AT knowledge, so from complete beginner through to quite familiar. I'm going to select quite familiar today. And then finally, we ask about study priorities. So across areas of essay writing, lectures, organisation, presentations, reading and research, and revision. And this is really just to support some kind of goal setting, supports that process of, I suppose, metacognition, of prompting the student to think about the areas that they might need, you know, most support on. So I am going to slide up the slider against organisation for that one and click on finish. So a short 4-step onboarding process, and I'm into the platform proper. So on the screen, we have what we call our Learn dashboard. There are 2 tabs here. So 2 main ways that I can engage with learning content within the FindMyFlow platform. The first is my study flows, and the second is my software. My study flows we land on by default because that's I suppose the USP of FindMyFlow. Where students will typically start, I would suggest, would be under my software. So I'm going to click into that tab, and I have a series of chips tabs with the names of the different pieces of software that I selected during that onboarding process. The only exception being Microsoft 365. In the UK, all university students would have access to that through their institution. So we also include information on, using some of the features within the Microsoft suite there. You'll see I have Dragon, or sorry, on my screen I have Dragon selected, and within here I have Essentials and I have Strategies. If I click into Essentials, this is those sort of traditional software tutorials, fairly bite-sized videos that take me through the basics of getting up and running with my Dragon assistive technology. So I have information on creating a user profile. That's my very first video. And I'm just going to press play here to give you a flavour of some of that content.
Welcome to the first Dragon Essentials tutorial.
I'm so sorry for that was very loud. I absolutely had a plan to turn that down before I press play.
Dragon transforms your spoken words into text and allows you to use voice commands to speed up your workflow. Let's begin with the first rule of Dragon. Remember to connect your headset to your laptop prior to launching the software. This ensures that Dragon will automatically detect your headset. Upon launching Dragon for the first time, you'll see this welcome screen where you're prompted to create a user profile.
I'll pause it there. So just to give you a little bit of a taste of the content. So we create all of our videos from scratch rather than just pulling in, the vendor videos. We do work closely with vendors to then recreate the information and give students a consistent experience with the same kind of narrator throughout, and making sure that things are captioned and delivered in, I suppose, an accessible and consistent way. All of the content, all of the video content in here for each of the different features and setup steps for an assistive tool like Dragon, also sort of 1 to 2 minute videos, but also I have a switch to text option. So if a student's not going to necessarily engage the best with video content, then we do have sort of step-by-step illustrated written versions of that same content that they might use as their primary way of working through these steps, or just as an alternative to the video content. So on my screen is that same information around creating a user profile presented in text format. Once I've read this content, if I click continue at the bottom of the screen, I move on to the next article and I have controlling the microphone. At the top of my screen, I can switch back to video and engage with that content in that way. So the idea here is that a student could come in and, working with their AT trainer, for example, work through the essentials, the basics, building up the skills, the how-to of their AT, before then actually moving on to think about, how am I going to apply this? How is this going to support me with tasks that I need to get done? So this is where the strategies start to come in. So for Dragon, on my screen here, I have strategy videos. So these go into writing with Dragon, enhancing revision with audio. If I click into the Mind View section and open up my strategies, I've got things like creating an essay outline with Mind View, using it for revision maps, lots of different content. So the reason we have essentials and strategies is so that all of the learning content around a particular tool is housed here in one place. I come to my software, I come to MindView, and then if I wanted to, I could work through everything end to end. But the strategies are actually what are pulling through into my study flows. So moving back onto my study flows tab, you'll see lectures is the first one, and so that's the one that's selected. And I have 4 cards on screen. These are what we call module cards within the flow, getting the most out of lectures. There's a section on remote learning, and then finally I have lectures with Glean as a full module. within there. I'm going to skip to essay writing, which is by far our most popular content and module here. So I have a number of modules within this flow, starting off with understanding the question. So if I open this module, you'll see I've got fairly bite-sized content that's focused around just getting started. I've got to write a written assignment. How do I go about deciphering the question? So study skills, best practice, and hopefully what is a fairly accessible and short format. Yeah, there's kind of short format introduction to this study skill. So we start off with understanding the question. My next module that I'm moving into is around creating an essay plan. So again, it is fairly short format, written content, just guiding the student through in hopefully a chunked down format, how to sort of go about putting a plan together for their essay. And this is where we start to see that assistive technology content pulled in. So on the left-hand side of my screen, I have the different chapters within this module, and one of them is creating an essay outline in MindView, because I'd selected MindView as my mind mapping tool at that onboarding step. If I'd selected inspiration, this module would instead pull through the video content on using inspiration to create a not to create a mind view, that would be to create a mind map. Also here we have that new multi-software tutorial that I mentioned, so using Dragon together with MindView to create that mind map, if that's, you know, going to help me be most productive with this strategy. The other modules, I have writing the essay and assistive tech for writing that delve into, you know, okay, how am I going to get this essay? How am I going to get this assignment written? So as you might expect, lots of content here on writing with Dragon, because that was the tool that I'd selected. Also pulling through content on using read and write. So I have video content on using the prediction feature in read and write, or using their word banks, for example. The content under essay writing then moves through referencing and plagiarism, Grammarly, because I'd selected that I had access to that as my spell checking tool, and then finally editing and proofreading. So again, if I open up the editing and proofreading module, I have these kind of tips and guidelines that introduce what this skill is, what the, you know, what to bear in mind, as well as then information, because I'd selected read and write, my literacy support tool, on how I might use text to speech to, you know, tackle that proofreading. If it's going to be difficult for me to read all of that in text, to actually have that instead read back to me. And then the final step looks at developing your writing. And this is kind of really focused around some of that metacognitive practice, taking on board feedback, you know, and thinking how to interpret that. Throughout the platform, there is a focus on well-being, which I think is really important. And it does also point out to the reflective practice journal, which is built into FindMyFlow. So it's linked from this chapter here on turning experience into learning, but I can also access it directly from the sidebar here. And the idea is this is just a very short scaffolded reflective practice exercise with tooltips at each point. So it might be, you know, I want to reflect on my last essay. It prompts me to kind of state the facts about how I felt and what happened, to then reflect and analyse why things happened the way they did. Maybe I didn't get the marks I was expecting because, you know, I hadn't proofread, or I've messed up referencing or whatever it might be, and then to capture an action point for next time. We do also, for UK students, have this wellbeing section that points out to UK specific resources like Student Minds, which is a UK mental health charity, which I suppose is intended to kind of just like round off that it's the middle of the night, you're struggling, you've come to this platform to find guidance and support, and so felt important to include those there.
That's great. So a couple of the questions were around about the license for things. I think there was still confusion. So do people need to have, so one was around, you need a license for Dragon to be able to then, you know, separate to the MyFlow, and the same as I think so Read and Write Gold license. You need to have those licenses to be using them to do that. Yep.
Yes, that was a very important point actually I meant to make at the beginning of the demonstration, that FindMyFlow sits on top as a support resource. So you would select assistive technology that you already do have a license for, and then this way it doesn't give you access to that software.
Yep. The other question was in regards to skipping ahead. So you can skip ahead to explore, like, is that what in there? Yep.
Yes, absolutely. So we do imagine that students, you know, might come into the platform with a specific thing that they need to get done, a specific task in mind. So they absolutely can jump straight to referencing and plagiarism and you know, dive in to that content. They don't have to kind of work through in a linear fashion, although they can do so.
Yep, that's absolutely brilliant. Right, well, that's all the questions. Actually, there was one. Oh, yeah, no, I thought another one had come through. The one I suppose I have is for Australia. So we're not here yet. You're not here in Australia. So what are the steps if we as a sector are interested in actually looking and exploring MyFlow more for us as a country?
I mean, we're definitely very happy to give out evaluation licenses for people to have a look at that a little bit, you know, in more detail and understand whether that's going to work for you. Be very happy to set up you know, one-on-one calls with anyone who'd like to see a little bit more and maybe understand whether you know, the tools represented on the platform on the platform, you know, map to the 80 that they, you know, the tools they're making available and what they have licenses for as well.
That's absolutely fabulous, Lucy. We've put your email address and also your LinkedIn profile in the chat so people can access that. So it's lucy@findmyflow.co.uk. So people can contact you if they want to follow that up, but we also may explore further how we can partner with FindMyFlow at ADCET. So thank you so much. It was really great to see the tool in use, and quite exciting, I think, for students to learn. Often, sometimes we get technology and we don't really explore it or just do a little bare minimum. I think to be able to actually have these lessons there for us to explore the technologies we have even better and utilise them more would be fabulous. So before everybody leaves, we have a survey we'll put into the chat. So if you could please complete that. We also have a couple of new webinars coming up. So, so please register for those. We've got building community and supporting neurodiverse students through study skill workshops, which will be presented by the University of Adelaide, one of their projects at the moment. And then we actually have another one from Microsoft, which is accessibility in Office 365, inclusive, not inclusive. Inclusive is not elusive. So both those webinars are coming up. So yeah, please register for those and share them with your networks. Okay, we'll let you get on with your day, Lucy. We'll all close down this end. But thank you so much for your time. It's absolutely brilliant to hear from you. And I think a lot of people have put in the chat and said thank you as well. Take care. And thanks everybody for joining us. And thank you for the captioner, Sharon. Take care all.